Welcome to the Restoration Room, a space designed for rebuilding, for healing, and finding your way back to wholeness. Here, we get real about mental health, spiritual recovery, and the wounds left behind by life, toxic church culture, or personal brokenness.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to the Restoration Room. You already know where you are. This is a place where you can come in broken, leave rebuilt, and learn how to stay whole. I'm your host, Ryan. And today I'm excited because we're stepping into this conversation that I think is really deeply human. This is a truth. Healing is beautiful, but it does not always erase grief. And if we're honest about some stuff, some losses, they don't just disappear because time has passed. Some grief actually still shows up. It shows up in memories, in quiet moments, unexpected triggers, and sometimes in the middle of seasons that we actually think are going pretty good. And the truth is that can cause a lot of confusion. But many people think that if grief is still existing, then healing must not have really happened. Can I just tell you something? That's a lie. You can be healed and still mourn. You can move forward and still miss what was lost. So today in this episode, we are talking about grief that still shows up. We're going to deal with how to process grief without shame, how to honor what you lost without being stuck and living stuck in it, and how to carry sorrow without letting it define your future. The truth is this: grief is not always a sign that you are broken or that you've been rebroken. Sometimes it's just simply proof that something mattered. So take a breath, give yourself a little grace, and let's have this conversation together. You know where you are. Yeah, this is the Restoration Room. It's time to get to work. Lean in, breathe in, and let's do what we do. Let's have a real conversation. Let's go.
So take a seat, take a breath, and lean in, because restoration starts right here in the Restoration Room. Starts right here in the Restoration Room.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to the Restoration Room. I'm so excited because we are at week 9. And can I tell y'all that this season has been much easier to deal with than last season. Not because last season was like difficult or it was necessarily hard. I think that it was emotionally trying. It was emotionally, mentally pushing and taxing, but then life was also life too. I told y'all about that a few times. Like, life was really trying to wear me out. It's trying to wear me out this year too, but it's not the same. So I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for the time that I've spent here in the Restoration Room, the time that I've spent pouring. I'm thankful for my guests that have come up to this point. Man, they have been super dope. I hope you guys have been enjoying the podcast, but let's dig in tonight. So tonight we are talking about grief that still shows up. Here's the thing. I had to realize something at one point in my life, that grief is not, you know what? That sucker ain't got no rules. Like, it really doesn't. Like, when we have called for timeout, when we have said, you go to your corner and I go to my corner, and it seems like it leaves you alone, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just comes back and uppercuts you. Case in point, one time I was at the dental surgeon place to get all four of my wisdom teeth removed. And if you've seen any of those anesthesia movies or TikTok shows where they come in from under anesthesia, insert my video here. My mom took me and I came out of anesthesia and I was talking about my great grandmother. And at that particular point, I guess it's been about 2 years now since I got my wisdom teeth removed, but maybe about 6 years since she had died at that point, maybe eight. I give it 8 years since she had gone on at that point. And I was like really struggling. I woke up and I was like, Mom, do you remember Love? That's what we called my great grandmother. We called her Love. And we were like, I was like, do you remember Love? And she was like, yeah, of course I remember Love. That was my grandma. And so real quick backstory. I was almost born on Love's couch. She had that plastic cover on her couches back then. My mom's water broke, and I made the decision to enter the world at her house. So she took my mom to the hospital, to the ER, so that I could be born. Super dope. Miss that woman so very much. We used to fight all the time over who loved who the most, and she won every single time because she got me with this one phrase: "I loved you first." And I'm like, yo, that's not even fair. Like, that's cheating. I say I love you, you tell me you love me more, then I say I love you more, then you hit me with the book. Yep, you might love me more, but I loved you first. And I'm like, well, guess you won. Gloves off. Anyway, I loved that woman so deeply. Like, it was real bad. I loved her real bad. That was don't play about my love. And my love didn't play about me. So anyway, I was talking about Love, and as I was talking about her, I just broke down and started crying. I'm still under anesthesia, or coming from under anesthesia at this point, and I was like, I really miss her. Do you miss her, Mom? I was like, well, yeah, I miss her. And I was like, but I really miss her. And I wailed, wailed in that place, and my mom was just like, please don't cry. And then she started tearing up. Um, there's also another one, my grandma, on my dad's side. I had a moment as well, like with her, because I loved her deeply as well. She's also another woman who used to fight over who loved who more, but she would let me win sometimes. She was a woman who had the mind of an elephant. Even in the last stages of her life, she still remembered everyone's birthday, and she made sure that she called them to sing happy birthday to them. Shout out to both those women and their memory and their legacy. So I brought them up to say, listen, there were times when I thought that I had really like moved on. And then grief came out the corner after we had called timeout, quits, we ain't doing this no more, and hit me upside the head. Like, what are you doing? um, I think that one of the things that we have to realize is that healing does not always look the way that we think it does, specifically when it comes to grief. Grief, it really doesn't have any rules. I have not found a therapist. I have not found a doctor. I think they have found some medications. I personally have not. I'm not a medicine guy unless I have to be. Um, but it does not have moments where you can just be. It doesn't give you moments where you can be like, you know what, I'm over this now, and I can do this step, this step, this step, or take this pill and go through this process, and I'm done. It just doesn't. It can hit you out of nowhere. There are days where you really maybe seem like you are super strong and on top of the world, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's that one song that just comes on that reminds you of that person, or that one movie that comes on, or that one commercial, or that one thingamajigger, like the candy. Y'all know that candy, thingamajigger. If you don't, you have to go find it. I'm an 80s baby, so anyway. It's that one thing that reminds you of that particular person or that particular situation that will actually make you start the process all over again. We have to understand that just because you're healed does not mean that you're done grieving. There is no time limit. But you can't beat yourself up either because you're still out here going through it because someone is gone. And let's also be clear about something else too. Grief is not um grief is not about necessarily losses that you are putting someone in the grave, so to speak. It's also you grieve friendship losses, you grieve family losses, you grieve job losses. Like there are times when you really do have to go through this process called grief. And this particular process is going to send you into places and areas of your life that you really don't expect to go down or you thought you were done with. And I thought I was done grieving here. I thought I was done grieving there. It's not always the case. And I encourage you, when you do go through the place of grief again, when you go through a place where it just seems like it's really hard, I need you to just let it happen. We we have I let me not say we, because I'm just throwing y'all in the boat with me. We just sitting in a room together, but I I think that sometimes we have a problem with really saying, I thought I overcame this. I thought I was through this. I thought I got through this problem. And the truth is that there's still some things that need to be worked out in us. Sometimes we have to accept the fact that there are going to be losses in our lives that are still going to be there. There are still going to be times when we want to go visit the cemetery, where we want to go back and revisit. Remember, we talked about those Hey Big Head text messages? I keep messages for forever because I want to make sure that I remember what happened, when it happened, and how it happened. Um, I do. And so sometimes going back to text messages reminds me of why I had to let go, of why I stopped going through places or stopped dealing with certain people. No matter how many good times we may have had, being going back into the thought of, man, I really had so much fun with this person. I haven't seen them in forever. Let me send them a text message just to say hi. And when you send the text, it's you start to scroll back and you start to look at the old text messages and you begin to remember. Or you may not even have the text messages. You may actually go back and hang out with this person or these people and you get to them and you be like, man, I really am out here like I can't remember why I used to hang with these people. I can't remember why I used to do this with these people. Like, what am I doing here? Why am I still here? That's grief. That's a part of grieving. Because what happens is when you grieve, you go back to a place of loss. You go back to a place of, do you remember? You go back to a place of, I bust the windows out your car. You go back to a place of waiting to exhale. You go back to a place of when things were really good. You go back to places of how this person made me feel, and this person made me feel so good, and I remember all of the good times and all of the things, but something may have happened that required that time to stop. And so that is when grief comes in. That's when you start to begin to remember where you lost things at, where things just don't seem to always be in a place of rainbows and sunshine and unicorns and sunflowers. And I'm trying to pick up the happiest kind of things that I can with my limited colorful mind. Like everything is not going to be all clear skies and sunny and sunshine. It's not always going to be that way. And we have to realize sometimes too, people, family, friends, everybody that's in the room, we got to remember that this grief is not something that's going to be a one-time thing. The question is not about when is it going to stop, but how you're going to handle it when it comes back up again. Ecclesiastes 3 and 4, it says that there is a time to weep, there's a time to laugh, there's a time to mourn, and there's a time to dance. It tells you that there's times for everything. There's space for everything. And so one of the things that I want to encourage you to remember is that when you do go back to a space where you are grieving or when you are remembering loss, you have to lean into it. I'm not saying give yourself to it. I'm saying let grief take its course because sometimes It is working out of you what you have not worked out yet. Sometimes we get in grief overload and we just like, you know what? Enough is enough. I have to shut this down. I can't allow this to consume me. I cannot. And good for you, because you can't allow grief to consume you. You cannot allow grief to run your life. I don't want you to allow it. But sometimes when it comes back for a moment, I need you to make sure that you are okay with feeling it. You are okay with knowing that grief is going to be something inside of you that is going to always show you that you are still human. Okay. You have to understand as well that just because you've healed from a huge blow in your life, it does not mean that you are, that the grief is going to just go away. It doesn't. It does not erase grief. Healing does not erase grief. It's weird, right? Trying to think of it, it's like, well, I thought that I was healed. I thought that I was over that. Healing is a little different when it comes to grief. I feel like I picture it like this: you have a scar from a cut. Just because the cut is healed doesn't mean the scar is gone. And every so often, you look at that scar and you remember why you got it. And you remember the thoughts behind it. You remember the moment that it happened. You go back and you start to remember it again, right? But everyone doesn't see that as grief. I'm just talking through the process of what it can look like for some of us. But just because the scar is there does not mean you have not healed. You have. You've healed. You have moved beyond that place of hurt, that place where you've had to nurse that particular wound. You've moved beyond the place where, you know, the stitches are no longer holding your body together, but they dissolved or they've been removed. But the scar, though, the scar is always going to be there. And just because you're accustomed to the scar being there doesn't mean that it's not a part of your life. It also doesn't mean that it defines who you are. It also doesn't mean that you have to, always be like, oh, look at this scar, et cetera, all the things. Like, it's not, it doesn't always mean that. But what it does mean is that I overcame something. I went through a loss. I went through a hurt. I went through a trauma that I actually got through. And it makes you look at the scars a little different. Some scars you look at and be like, oh my goodness, that is hideous. How am I ever going to explain this to some people? But some scars you look through and you're like, no, that scar was from a really traumatic time in my life. And I'm so grateful that I made it through. Healing is not going to erase your grief, but it makes you look at it a little different. Healing from losses due to death is tough. But what about when you have to heal from friendships that you lost, that you never got closure? How do you deal with living with the fact that, you've had to go to different places and do different things with different people, and you're not doing that anymore? How do you deal with the fact that you now have a void in your life because you've had to cut people, things, addicts, addictions, that's the word I'm looking for, addictions off because you don't you don't do them anymore. Now, I used to fill my space and my time with these things that were negative to me at one point, and now they're gone. Now, what do I do? Some of us are not just grieving those things, but we're grieving seasons of our lives. We grieve the fact that summer is gone and fall is here. We grieve the fact that fall is gone, and that's probably the last. If you live in Philly, we don't get much sunshine in the winter. It's very gray, very gloomy, right? We have moments of sunshine, but it's not always great. But we grieve seasons of our lives. Some of us, like I did when I went through my church hurt, we talked through this process already. I went through a major grief in my life because now what am I going to do that this season is over? Now what am I going to do that this is no longer something that I'm doing anymore, right? And I told you guys, I turned to drinking, I turned to partying, I turned to sex, I turned to all of the things that were not godly, holy, and they were terrible coping mechanisms because I was grieving a season of my life that God was literally calling me out of. Every week I went to that church, God said to me, I'm taking you out of here. You're leaving this place. And every week I responded to God and said, the devil is a lie. I'm not going anywhere. God put me here and he's not taking me out of here. I'm going to die in this church. And so he had to force me out. And I had to take a different route. And that route took me down this path of grief and self-destruction. Some of us are even grieving the former versions of ourselves. Ooh, yikes. Watch this. I used to be that person. We always talk about who we used to be. Like, I used to be this person and I'm not this person no more. You better be glad I'm not this person. And if I was this person, I'd have did this, that, and the third. Like, my godmom calls Germantown girl would come out. Some of y'all would say my West Philly side would come out. My North Philly side would come out. We have all different kinds of sides in Philly. It's just crazy. There's hoods, there's souths, there's divisions, there's everything. But like, we grieve those things by always referring to who we used to be. And not in a I'm giving my testimony kind of way, but in a you better be glad I'm not the same person no more, because if I was, my guy, you'd be on the floor right now. That's actually grieving a former version of yourself. Have you thought about that? What is grief? Grief is missing something, going through something emotionally, but missing essentially a piece, a person, a thing. You miss that thing and you're going through an emotional process with it. So when you grieve, you remember all of the things that you used to do. This is hurting me right now. I just want y'all to know that. You remember all the things that you used to do, all of the places you used to go, and then all of a sudden you start lamenting over it. But why are we lamenting over what God took us from? He legit took us from some bad spaces, but we as humans continue to go backwards. This is not new though, because they did this in Exodus. In Exodus, when they got to a point where they had gotten tired of the walk, they got tired of the journey in the wilderness. Moses was up in the mountain for days at a time, not coming down. All they saw was a cloud. God was never speaking to them. They would say often, we were better off if we just stayed in Egypt. It was better for me to just stay in slavery. How many of us have actually said that before? We left the place that we begged God to take us out of. And because it's not what we think it is or what we think it should be immediately, because we're going through a healing process, we're going through a deliverance process, we sit back and say, you know what? It was probably easier if I had just stayed there. It's not that easy. It's not what you think it is all the time. Sometimes the versions of ourselves that we are leaving behind are so difficult to let go because it was easy being that. This is challenging me tonight. It's challenging me because I am really thinking about how I used to be and how it was so easy being this person, right? It was so easy being this person. It was so easy being this person that was not kind to people. It was so easy being this person who just said, you know what? I'm having a really rough day. I'm just going to drink until I feel better. It was so easy being this person that said, you know what? I'm having a really rough day. I'm going to take my frustration out on somebody's child sexually. It was so easy and I felt better afterwards. I felt okay afterwards. And some days I didn't. Some days I didn't feel better. Some days I didn't feel like, this is just it. And this is where I'm going to be. Like, I felt like, gosh, I need something else. Gosh, I need more to try to get this thing off of me. And it's not that easy. And I began grieving the version of myself that I used to be. There were times in my life where I said, you know what? It was easier if I had just stayed quiet and didn't hurt. and didn't tell anyone I was hurting. It was easier if I just didn't start this podcast because it brings up old memories. It brings up old issues. It brings up things about myself that I thought I had already overcome. Listen to me. Listen to me. Hear me clearly. We have to let our old selves go. We cannot continue to hold on to our former seasons. We cannot continue to hold on the people that mean us harm. Listen, and I am dying over here, y'all. Um, there are some relationships that we still have that God has already pronounced dead, and we are still sitting at the funeral, weeping and wailing and trying to keep it alive. It's hard. It really is, because it takes something, it takes a strong person to close the casket and lower it into the ground. But it takes a stronger person to never go back to the gravesite. I believe this is why Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. Once it's done, you got to move on. You can't stay here. You can't stay in this place. Some people we just got to let go. Some relationships we just got to let go and let the dead bury the dead. I was driving through Center City, went to dinner with my best friend, my brother, Randy, shout out to him. And on my way home, as we were leaving the restaurant, I saw someone. And I was like, wow, this person is still doing the same thing when I stopped being cool with them. Same thing. Years ago, 6 years ago, still out here. And this is not me making myself to be better than someone, right? This is me looking back and saying, I remember when I actually grieved over losing this person. And now that I'm out of that grief stage pertaining to that friendship, I'm like, man, what was I thinking? God really challenges us. I believe that this challenge tonight is for us to let go of our old selves, let go of our old ways, and let grief be grief, but also heal from the places that we once were. It's challenging, and it's time to have a funeral. Understand that it is okay to have faith and grief in the same room. Okay? Faith and grief are in the same room. Scripture says that Jesus wept. He grieved for a moment, and then he called Lazarus out of the grave. Faith and grief were in the same room. You can still have faith and grieve over someone. Ecclesiastes just told us that there's times for all of these things. There's times for mourning. There's time for dancing. There's time for crying. There's time for this. There's time for that. All of the times. There's time for all of it. But what do we do when the time is over? Understanding that faith is going to carry us through. Believing that the Lord allowed a chapter in our lives to close so that we could move on to a better place. Acknowledging that some decisions that I made led to really bad choices. But you know what? That's okay, because I learned a lot from those choices that I made. And I'm here now, and I'm doing great. But we as a people must understand, as we sit here in this restoration room tonight, that grief has its time. And while it does not operate by rules, I have my own set of rules that I live by. And that's faith. Faith that says while I may feel like I feel right now, my faith lifts me higher because I am confident in this very thing. He who began a good work in me will be faithful to perform it. That means that if he started this thing in me, he's going to finish this thing in me. If he called me out of a certain lifestyle, he's going to keep me out of this lifestyle. If he is changing my heart about things, he's going to make sure my heart stay changed. If he's changing my mind about myself and what I think of me, he's going to make sure that he gives me the confidence that I need to keep going. This faith is what you deal with when grief shows up again. I know that this chapter is closed, but what I also know is that if I have to peek at it again, when I'm done, I can say, thank you, God, for bringing me through this place in my life. Because what would I have done if I didn't? Who knows? So, feel better. As we close out today's episode, I need you to remember a few things. Grief is not failure. It does not mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean you've gone backwards. And it doesn't cancel the healing that God has done in your life. Some things, they just matter deeply. And it's okay to honor those things. But understand this. While grief does deserve compassion, it cannot be allowed to control your future. Eventually, healing asks something of us. It asks us to rebuild rhythms, to create structure, and to develop habits that support the life we're trying to sustain. Here we go again. Wholeness, which is what we're learning. It's not just emotional. It's practical as well. And that's where we're going next. Our next episode is called Discipline Over Motivation. We're talking about building a life that supports your healing. I want to deal with how we stop defending our temporary feelings, how to create healthy routines, and discuss why discipline is one of the greatest forms of self-respect. Do me a favor, make sure you're subscribed. I need you to meet me here in the Restoration Room. We are on every podcast platform you can find. Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and my favorite, Apple Podcasts. So this is the Restoration Room. Come in broken, leave rebuilt, and stay home. I'll see y'all next week.
Each episode blends real talk, biblical truth, and restorative insight. We give you the tools to rise above, recover,